everyone. A very good afternoon to all of you. I am Priyanshi, welcoming you all on behalf of Solar Water and Forestry Group to the first day of Philippines Solar Week 2021. Hope you had a great time in networking with your peers today. If not, you're missing the opportunity. But no worries, we will have networking after the sessions till 6:30 p.m. But now it's the time to start with our conference. Before that, I take the pleasure to thank our partners for extending their immense support to organize the event. So, starting with our presenting partner, SMA Solar, and also our platinum partner, Goodwe. Now, let me quickly take you through the agenda for the day. We will be having two sessions which are focused on utility solar sector. The first would be solar market outlook, policies, regulatory framework, and tender and finance. The second one will be the big tech trends shaping large scale solar. We will be playing our presenting sponsor video by SMA and the platinum partner Goodwe.
Thank you, Priyanshi. I'll share my screen.
Thank you so much, team, for playing the sponsor videos. And now, without any delay, let's begin our first session. And the session will be starting with a sponsor presentation by Mr. Yogesh Sharma from SMA Solar Southeast Asia. Welcome on screen, sir.
Thank you, Pranchi. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can see your screen. You can start with the presentation.
Okay, great. Um, Thanks for introduction for this Solar Philippines week. My name is Yogesh Sharma. I work for SMA and I am a sales manager for Southeast Asia. And anyway, let us start without wasting time because time is very short. So energy is becoming sustainable and independent and decentralized. This is a big change in recent times, in last 2 3 years. More and more people and companies, institutions are becoming sustainable. They look for sustainable and environmentally friendly energy supply, and everyone wants to get rid of fossils. So the energy demand and the way energy is getting produced is changing worldwide. Now, solar power storage systems and digitalization are changing the world. Now, if you see, solar power is becoming increasingly cost effective. Um, Earlier, it used to be quite expensive, so people or companies or anyone used to be a bit reluctant to use solar, or someone will use as a hobby. But now, if you see this chart, they, it is becoming quite affordable, and rather going forward, up to 2030, it will become cheaper. PV installation growth is quite high. This 12% I have put on minimum basis worldwide, but in some countries it can be up to 25% to 30%. In some countries it can less than 5%, but on an average it is growing at a very fast pace. So last year, overall installations were about 120 to 125 gigawatts. And we can see in 2030, the installations can be 350 gigawatt or maybe more. This is per annum figure. Now, storage becomes very important component the way energy is changing, because it is going to compensate for the fluctuation. And as I mentioned in the second slide, everyone wants to become independent. So hence the storage is coming a very important factor moving forward. See, nowadays storage has started, but not still at a very minimal level, about 15 to 20 gigawatt hour last year. And see, in 2030, it would be close to 400 to 450 gigawatt hour. That is the estimate. But by 2040, it will dramatically increase and could be up to 2,500 gigawatt hour and maybe more. Now, increasing decentralization, energy supply system will become more complex. Why? Today, the major supply comes from utilities, and solar or wind just complement. In future, the power generation would be mainly from solar and wind, and utility would be just compensating whatever is the shortfall, because no one single source can afford to fulfill overall requirement. So there will be a mix, but the renewable mix would be the highest. There can be other renewable sources, but that's the main point I'm trying to say here. We are shaping as SMA for energy supply for tomorrow, because energy is constantly changing and the demands are changing. Now, why SMA? It has been established in 1981. We have an office, head office in Germany. We have about 18 worldwide regional offices. Our total installation base is 100 gigawatt, for our inverter power worldwide and 3 gigawatt of battery inverter power. We have more than 1600 patents worldwide, and um, currently we have slightly more than 3300 employees. Last year revenue was 1.27 million euro, and a billion euro, sorry. And this is EBITDA. I mean, I don't think you will be concerned about that, but it's a profitable company. And next year, this year, we are expecting around that much volumes have increased, but everyone knows due to COVID, it has a huge impact. Though we are trying to do our best, and we are maintaining the supplies and our, um, is inverter supply worldwide to the customers. Now, inverter parts sold in 1 year close to 14 to 15 gigawatt, and this is the actual number of what we sold last year worldwide. SMA is one of the most innovative and technology company in the world as far as solar power is concerned. We see in 1987 we developed first transistor inverter, and then consistently we kept on moving up in the technology. In 2001 we developed first Sunny Island, which is an off-grid inverter, and which is installed worldwide in in Africa's, in Asia, in Pacific Islands, in South America, wherever you can think of. And we have developed first transformer less inverter. We developed first string inverter and multi-string inverters. We developed Sunny Tri-Power, and 99% that time it was the first time we achieved the efficiency, and then of course other inverters came. Similarly, in 2017, we developed Core 1, which is the first freestanding string inverter. And there was a lot of saving by installing this inverter. And worldwide, this inverter has got a big name and people love it. And it has won a lot of prizes. Apart from that, now as energy is changing, we have developed this NXOX system, which is IoT platform for total energy management coming from different various resources of energy. And now we are into EV charger also. Apart from that, in central inverters, we have developed the Sunny Central Up, which has got very high power density, and our biggest inverter in uh, is 4.6 megawatt, and we also supply complete system along with transformer and switch gears, which is only 20 feet. Now we obviously have a global presence, and we have a lot of partnerships. Like for example, we entered into partnership with Danfoss, and we acquired some of their technology, and they became one of our investors in SMA. Moving forward, now since energy is changing for e-mobility, we have a collaboration with Audi in and we test a lot of systems for e-mobility and energy management, and for home energy management also with Audi. And we have entered into partnership with Koniva, which is again a complete energy management system, and Alexion, which is again e-mobility. Now, our inverters are extremely reliable because of our testing procedures. Our labs are state of art test centers, and those who have visited our German factory as well as lab, they are completely amazed. And I wish you all who are listening today get a chance. Now travel is opening to visit SMA factory in Germany, and we do complete functional test also to ensure the performance of the inverters. And also, not only we do in the lab, but we do install And these inverters are installed either in our premises or in Germany, which we consistently throughout the life we observe the performance. And in the event, suppose if we find any defect or whatever, we immediately change the software and inform our customers. Our inverters are installed in harshest conditions or environment, whether it is Asia or very warm countries or in Europe, where sometimes they are under the snow for 4 months or maybe more. We are one of the most sustainable companies. We don't only sell the inverters, we worldwide, this is a figure of 2019, we saved about 10.5 billion for environmental damage, which was prevented, and we consume 58% less energy to produce a kilowatt of inverter today, which used to be 4 years ago. And we consistently, these figures, we are not making it up. We do surveys with our customers and approximately 50,000 customers, and now this number is increasing year by year. And that's how we present these numbers. And because we are in all the regions, in Americas, in Africas, in Gulf and Asia, so this sustainability figure, like depending on the situation, one market can go down, but other picks up. So, like due to COVID, this year we all know Asia has been quite affected, but we are doing Europe comparatively and America, because their vaccination rate was very high earlier. Our inverters have gone in very high numbers. So that's why the sustainability figure remains very consistent or consistently growing. With our solutions, people around the world, they can use energy independently, and that is our focus of SMA. What it means is that we not only supply inverters, we have battery inverters to support energy storage. Then we can manage the whole energy management. We have a system, NXOX, as I just touched upon. And then the customers can sell directly in energy market through our Coniva system. And of course, the monitoring is there. Sunny Portal is our very old system, but it is complemented by NXOX going in the future and currently as well. Companies, like this is for commercial, every company wants to save their cost in a long term, and we are equipped to do that, because again, we generate solar power for one, I gave example, and we have a storage products like Sunny Tri-Power Storage 60. Then we have a data manager and Sunny Portal to manage energy and to sell energy on spot, which is not very common in Asia, but it is it is gaining ground in European countries, and I think in a couple of years that would be the case in Asia as well, as we are growing very fast. Now, for large scale, all investors or project developers, their focus is to make a future-proof investments. One thing is cost, but ultimately your PPAs last for, I don't know, 20 to 30 years, depending on the situation or countries. And now you can see we generate power, we can supply battery storage solutions, and we can optimize yield as we give support to integrate and enhance the performance, as well as we have a lot of service products. This is just to support in your service what I just mentioned, which means we can do repowering. Sometimes when your plant gets old, you need to change inverters or you have to repower so that you gain efficiency or profits, etc. We have smart connected inverters. Even for residential and commercial, that means that your inverters are monitored by SMA, and we inform you automatically if there is an issue. And then we also have developed and have a department to support you for engineering services, which means for bigger plants or even for smaller plants, we can monitor your operations and advise you for the maintenance. We can obviously we have extended warranties up to 15 to 20 years depending on your product, and that is it basically. I ran very fast. I could have extended my time explaining each slide to you, but looking the time frame, which was only 10 minutes. So but if you have any questions, feel free to send us email and we'll clarify on any of the topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for the insightful presentation. Now we are having a presentation by Miss Spencer from Goodwe. So on screen,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Priyanshi.
Spencer, ma'am, you are on mute. You can start with your presentation now.
Yeah, thanks Yogesh for his excellent speech. So, hello everyone. I'm Spencer, solution engineer from Goodwill Solar Academy. I'm now supporting the Australia and Southeast Asia for the PV system solutions. So today I'm glad to introduce you Goodwill's commercial and industrial solution and some applications in Southeast Asia. Today's sharing will be carried out from the following four aspects. First of all, let me give you an overview of Goodwill, who we are and what we do. So Goodwill is a global leading inverter manufacturer, but we are actually more than that. Our vision is to create a new era of the smart energy, and we are determined to be the main driving force in the global energy transition. So to prove that, we've installed over 2 million units of inverters and helped save over 26 million tons of carbon dioxide. So we start our smart energy journey since 2010. In the past 10 years, we developed in a dramatic speed and become a famous brand trusted by customers. We were listed on Shanghai Stock Exchange last year, and our business is keep expanding and growing. As a global company, we have branches, sales, and service centers all over the world so that all our clients can be served in time. We also have two R&D centers and two factories to ensure the product's innovation as well as production and delivery. Our global sales revenue breaks through 200 million USD last year. And as a well-known inverter manufacturer, Goodwill has won many awards recognized in the PV industry. For example, Goodwill is the only solar inverter manufacturer to win the TUV Rainland All Quality Matters Award for 6 consecutive years. And we also awarded by the Woodmakers as world's #1 hybrid storage inverter supplier. Next, let's look at some typical commercial and industrial system solutions and applications of Goodwill commercial products. So this is a system layout specialized for commercial rooftops. So in this system, the generated solar power will be consumed by the load consumption first, and then the rest power will be fed into the grid. So in CNI scenario, normally we will have multiple inverters, so we can use the SEC 1000 for load consumption monitoring and export power limit. And Goodwill also offers free online monitoring platform called the SIMS Portal, which is short for the Smart Energy Management System. It is a smart tool to help customers monitor their power plants in a virtualized way and help the maintenance. And we also offer system solution for the low voltage grid, for example, in the Latin American and Southeast Asia.
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am, but your slides aren't changing.
I'm changing. Sorry.
Can you please change your slides and present? Your slides weren't changing yet. Yes, it's changed now. You can go ahead.
Okay, maybe I just show in this way. I'm sorry about that. So in the large commercial projects, we are also offering the products and the system solution for the high voltage scenario. So in the high voltage systems, the inverter output will connected to the transformer first and then connected to the high voltage distributed network. And the power line communication is also available for the cable investment saving. And here are our main products for the commercial and industrial application from 25 kilowatt to 136 kilowatt. We have these SMT that have the 3 MPPTs work from 25 to 36 kilowatt, and the MT series that offers both the low voltage and high voltage models with 4 MPPTs, and it has the power range from the 50 to 80 kilowatt. And we also have the HT series work from the 73 to 136 kilowatt. And Goodwill commercial and industrial products are featured with the full operation at 50 degree, and we have up to 150% DC oversizing and up to 115 AC output overloading. And we also have the integrated AFCI and power line communication that can be chosen. And we also have an ultimate high power inverter, which is the HT series. So the HT 1500 volt series is specially designed for the large commercial and industrial application and also for the large utility projects. This model is fully compatible with the mainstream high power modules, such as the 182mm and 210mm PV modules. And we will discuss this later. So a HT 1500 volt series also offers the second generation power line communication, as well as the smart IV curve diagnosis and the SVG functions. Here we have a special version with the KN series. It is specially designed for the 210mm PV modules. So the main difference is that the KN series will have the 6 MPPTs, and each MPPT will have 3 strings, and each string will have the maximum 20 ampere input current, so that it can fit in the large current train of the PV modules. So with the continuous updating of the larger wafer size and higher efficiency, the PV modules are produced by the 210 millimeter and 182 millimeter silicon wafers. So the 182 modules, which is expected to have the 550 volt, while the 210 millimeter may have expect to reach 670 volt with even larger current. As far as we can see, so the 182 millimeter wafer has been widely used in the utility scale power plants and also some commercial rooftops. So our inverter could be fully adapted to 182 PV modules. We can see that the mainstream 182 millimeter manufacturer has the short circuit current at about 13 to 40 ampere. And we found that even the one Jinko that has the largest short circuit current of 14.9 ampere, it is below the 15 ampere with our inverter. It can support the maximum 15 ampere input current per string, and it can already be a mainstream combination for the 182 module and HT inverters. So we can say that we are fully adapted to 182 millimeter PV modules. And in the CNI applications, our solution for the 210 millimeter PV module will be that we can connect only one PV string for each MPPTs. so that we can have a maximum input current of 30 ampere. So here we can take the Trina Vertex 600 volt as an example. And also we use the Goodwe 120 kilowatt HT. So here the short circuit current of the PV is 18.52 ampere, and the open circuit voltage is 41.5 voltage at the STC. So after some calculation, we can have 22 PV modules per string, and also we can have the 12 strings connected. So here we need to pay attention that we should connect the PV strings to the even strings, so that because we have upgraded our MPPTs, so the even strings can actually allow higher input current. While for the utility projects, we have the special version KNHT as we've mentioned. So the string current of the KNHT is 20 ampere with 3-string design. Most clients may have the concern if they need an external fuse to prevent the 2-string current backfeeded to the 1-string. Well, the KN still use the no fuse design to solve this problem, but it is equips the intelligent DC switch, which it can be automatically trip the DC switch when the overcurrent is failure. So this DC switch can receive the trip signal from the inverter DSP to shut down the DC circuit when the emergency happens. So we can say that our new model is also perfectly matched the 210 millimeter modules. So next let's have a look at the product features of Goodwe. So Goodwe inverters can adapt to the multiple environments. For the multiple angle rooftops, we have up to 12 MPPTs. So it is very flexible for the system design. And Goodwe inverters also features for the full load operation at high temperature, and can also adapt to the coastal areas, because the HT series have the C5 protection level. And for the lightning prone area, we also integrated with the Type 1 SPD, which can be chosen. So as we've mentioned before, Goodwe inverters has a good heat dissipation performance, because we have very reasonable heat dissipation paths, and also we are integrated with like very powerful and NMB fans. So our HT series can actually derating from the 45 degree, and the SMT and MT, which is the CNI products, can degrading from the 50 degree. As we know, there's a hazard called the arc failure. So Goodwe commercial products has an optional choice of the arc failure protection with the AFCI 2.0 level protection. And we also have this smart IV curve diagnosis function, which is upcoming. So it is a very useful tool for the operations and maintenance. We can support 20 arrow types, and so it is very efficient and cost saving than the traditional ways, because we can actually cut down the detection time down to the minimum level. And we also offers very flexible anti-PID functions for the Goodways, because as we can see, like in the very hot and humid environment, the negative of the modules will easily get the effect of the PIDs. So with the anti-PID functions, we can actually get more yielding from the power generation. We also offers very flexible configuration methods. We can either choose the LCD screen or use the SolarGo apps. So to ensure our products that can have very long life cycle, we have the diverse tests both internally and externally done by the third-party institutions. such as we have the IP protection test is conducted by the TUV, and we also have strict quality management procedures in factories. As you can see through the pictures so good, we have very strict control and production line. We have the self-developed ATS test to make sure our inverter is 100% ready before shipment. And we also have the aging test to ensure that our inverters are very reliable in extreme hot weather conditions. Okay, thank you. So that's all for my part. You are very welcome to ask us any questions.
Thank you so much for the insightful presentation and setting the tone for today's program. Let me see, is everyone with me? Should we start the discussion now? Please share your emojis and thumbs up. Okay, so I know all the audience is with me and as excited as I am. Now it's time to begin with the first panel discussion, which is on solar market outlook, policies, regulatory framework, tenders, and finance. And to discuss this with us, we have in our elite panel Mr. Dennis Quinterio from Baker McKenzie, Miss Ma Cynthia Hernandez from KPMG Philippines, Mr. Arnad Ariel from Blue Leaf Energy, and Mr. Milan Keo from Hexagon Peak. Now, I welcome all the panelists on the screen and requesting Dennis sir to take the discussion ahead. Over to you, sir.
Many thanks, Priyanshi. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to session one of Philippine Solar Week. This panel discussion will focus on the solar market outlook, policies, regulatory framework, tenders, and finance. My name is Dennis Quintero. I'm a partner in the Kisumbing Torres Law Firm, a member firm of Baker and McKenzie in Manila. I head the firm's energy, mining, and infrastructure practice. I have the pleasure of introducing our session one panelists. Ms. Maria Cynthia Hernandez, principal in the Deal Advisory Group of RG Manabat and Company, KPMG Philippines. Mr. Arno Airal, Corporate Solutions Director of Blue Leaf Energy, which specializes in the development, finance, construction, and operation of both commercial and industrial and utility scale solar systems across Asia Pacific. And last but not the least, Mr. Milan Koev, founder of Hexagon Peak, which is engaged in project development, EPC, and O&M, development and long-term ownership of solar rooftop commercial and industrial and utility scale, both ground-mounted and floating systems. The Philippine solar market is steadily developing, yet there remains a great potential for further growth. Based on the Department of Energy's list of awarded solar projects, the list is 10 pages long. The projects being in different stages from pre-development to development to commercial operation. Now, in terms of installed capacity and potential capacity, nationwide, there's an installed capacity in megawatts of around 1,187, and then potential capacity in megawatts of 11,892.31. For Luzon, the installed capacity is only 595 megawatts, while the potential capacity is around 8,300. For Visayas, the installed capacity is around 508 megawatts, while potential capacity is around 1,760. And then lastly, for Mindanao, the installed capacity is only 83 megawatts, while the potential capacity is around 1,800. To start our panel discussion, I'd like to ask our panelists, what do you think is driving the utility sector ahead? Perhaps Cynthia, it can be the first one to share your views on this point.
Sorry to inform you, sir. Cynthia ma'am has some technical issues. She'll be joining in a while. By the time you can continue with other panelists.
Okay, noted, Priyanshi. And perhaps Arno, would you like to share your views on this point?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking the question. So maybe just to set a bit of context. I mean, as you mentioned, I represent Blue Leaf, which is a subsidiary of the Macquarie Green Investment Group. So within the group, we touch across all forms of renewable, whether it's offshore wind, onshore wind, solar, obviously, which is the topic today, and that's utility scale or commercial and industrial, and as well as storage and any other forms of renewables. In terms of the opportunity, as you said, there's a huge potential. I think in the Philippines, it's the conditions are pretty good. The requirements are there definitely. For more injection of renewables, and you're asking what's driving the development forward. I guess first of all is necessity. It's pretty obvious that the Philippines is a growing economy. The power demand is increasing. I think everybody is aware of the dependency challenges, especially with the reduction in the output of some of the gas fields. So there's actually a widening gap, if you want, between the future generation potential and the demand. And on top of it, there's the imperative to try and mitigate climate change. And the Philippines again will be one of the countries that is amongst the most exposed to the consequences of climate change if it doesn't get under control to some extent, right? So I think those are really strong imperatives. And even most recently, I think what we are seeing today in the world, those are crazy times for the energy markets, right? You're saying, I don't think there's one country that is not affected by either shortages of power. Look at what's going on in China, or sharp increases in import costs, for raw energy supplies. So I think there's also that dimension that by enabling more generation of renewables within the country, you really deal with a lot of those challenges in one go. Because you increase your self-sufficiency in energy, you reduce your future risk for input cost, and you mitigate climate change, as well as having positive economic impact. So I think the reasons why we're seeing the growth are pretty obvious, and there's really great potential. We are quite excited. We see, as you say, more than 10 gigawatt of potential, and we are. I think it's public domain. We've signed a partnership for a 1.25 gigawatt, project with Sun Asia. So we certainly see Philippines as a priority market. Sorry, I think you're on mute, Dennis.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Arno,
No problem.
for sharing your perspective and insights, especially on the global scale, what's driving the solar utility sector. And can I also request our panelist Milan to share his views with us?
Hi, Dennis. Hi, everyone. I think what is driving the market? Nothing. It's one of the failed markets, globally speaking. It's real pity to see that such a promising market was ruined by really mishandled policies. And all the obvious problems that we have seen in the past, including no real stimulus for deployment of capital right now, no subsidies whatsoever, has led to a situation where a lot of developers slash investors have basically pulled out of the country. And now we really see more or less private PPAs taking place, driven mostly by the very high electricity rates. There is a significant potential for the country and the private sector to really save significant amount of money from electricity bills by deploying more solar. However, the current framework in the country does not enable such deployment on a massive scale. Several issues. Number one, off-grid is not taking place really because of the challenge with Solar Philippines. Then we have land constraints. A lot of utility scale projects are stuck with land conversion. And on top of that, we have all the private gencos being really in a terrible financial state, which also makes a lot of projects difficult. So essentially, what is really needed to drive the industry forwards right now is really a whole new set of regulations, a framework that will protect investors and will solve challenges from the past. We know that there has been hundreds of megawatts of projects that have generated gigawatt hours of electricity that has been curtailed for years. Some of those projects are still not paid or not fully paid, uh, and so on and so forth. So again, the only driver right now is a few private PPAs here and there, but this is really really insignificant number compared to what the potential of the country is.
Thank you so much, Milan, for sharing your insights with us. I believe Cynthia was still unable to join us. So if you'll allow me, aside from taking on the moderator role, maybe I can also provide some comments from a Philippine perspective on what I believe is driving the utility sector. So Milan has mentioned earlier that there have been a number of corporate PPAs that we're seeing in the market. So again, this is a product of the policy of the Philippine government to promote retail competition and open access. And in fact, currently, the ARCO, or the retail competition and open access, has been expanded to cover end users with an average monthly peak demand of at least 500 kilowatts for the preceding 12 months. So this is now phase 3 of the ARCOA. Previously, under phase 1, the minimum average monthly peak demand was 1 megawatt monthly peak. Then under phase 2, this has been lowered to 750 kilowatts, and now it's 500 kilowatts for phase 3. So under this ARCOA, qualified end users can enter into what we call the renewable energy supply contracts, or corporate PPAs with contestable customers. So we're seeing a number of corporate PPAs now have been entered into. So that's quite good news, positive development. So the regulators are hoping that with the expanded ARCOA implementation, it's been reduced now to 500 kilowatts monthly peak demand. This will encourage more investors in the sector. So again, another development in the Philippines that is driving the sector was the Green Energy Option Program that was introduced. Under the Green Energy Option Program, or the GEOP, corporate PPAs can be entered into by end users with an average peak demand of just 100 kilowatts. And they can enter into corporate PPAs with renewable energy supply companies. So we also have in the Philippines what they call the renewable portfolio standards, where distribution utilities, electric co-ops, and retail electricity suppliers are required to source a percentage of electricity requirements from RE sources. So these are among the policies and regulations that are helping drive the growth of the solar sector, the utility sector in the Philippines. Okay, the next topic that the panel will be discussing are the subsidies and incentives that are available for developers. Um, so I believe Cynthia is still not yet with us. So let me uh, take on this question if you allow me. So the subsidies and incentives for developers are those that are found under the Philippine Renewable Energy Act. Basically, this consists of incentives for renewable energy developers, including an income tax holiday for the first 7 years of commercial operations, duty-free importation of renewable energy machinery, equipment, and materials within the first 10 years upon the issuance of a certification of the renewable energy developer. There are also special realty tax rates on equipment and machinery. There's allowed a net operating loss carryover during the first 3 years from start of commercial operation. And then after the 7 years of the ITH or the income tax holiday, the developer shall pay a corporate tax of 10% of its net taxable income. There's also the incentive of the power generated or fuel sold uh, being subject to 0% value added tax. And renewable energy developer is also entitled to a cash generation based incentive per kilowatt hour rate generated, equivalent to 50% of the universal charge for power needed to service missionary areas. Likewise, a developer is entitled to have all the proceeds from its sale of carbon emission credits to be exempt from any and all taxes. And the developer is also allowed a tax credit equivalent to 100% of the value of the VAT and customs duties that would have been paid on the RE machinery, equipment, materials, and parts had these items been imported. So this shall be given to an RE operating contract holder who sources machinery, equipment, materials, and parts from a domestic manufacturer. So we have all these existing incentives and government policy that also seeks to further promote the development of the RE sector. Okay. Now, moving on, I'd like to ask Arno in Milan, um, what do you think are other interventions that are required to further boost the growth of the sector from a developer's perspective?
Do you want me to go first, Milan?
Yes, Arno, go ahead.
Okay, fine. So I'll take it. I mean, as Milan said, I think there's been a lot of learning on the way, right? In the Philippines, and with learning sometimes goes an element of pain, and challenges. But it's definitely not the worst position. If you look at the HSBC, recent update, or even the Ernst & Young, report on global attractiveness, I mean, Philippines is kind of reasonably well placed in Southeast Asia amongst its peers. So I think there's a really good potential. Let's put it this way. Now, what we're seeing is the main, as you said, there's a range of financial supports that exist, and there's definitely more that could be done. But what we're seeing from our perspective is really the biggest changes that could occur are actually on the kind of capacity building from a institutional framework perspective. We've seen significant changes. Sometimes some policies and frameworks that were less than optimum, let's put it this way, and that really has quite a negative impact on investors' ability to plan and commit capital, to certain markets. So I think the first thing would be really building capacity, in terms of the institutions and the framework, to make sure that it's more conducive for the opportunity to be seized, really, because the opportunity is there. As we said earlier, there's a huge requirement for power. The fundamentals are very good in the Philippines. There's wind resource, there's solar resource, and geothermal. So it's there for the taking, really. And we're seeing some good developments. I mean, clearly the ADB support, in the Laguna Lake program is useful. We're seeing the World Bank, support the offshore wind, early stage, framework development. So, there's, some positive elements there, but that's really important. The second one is the again, forward planning in terms of the grid infrastructure. We think that's sometimes overlooked, and I mean, countries overlook that at their peril, right? And I think Vietnam is a very good example that we've all watched, where they had great success in deploying huge amounts of PV capacity, in the last couple of years. But that kind of was running slightly ahead of a grid capacity to evacuate, and distribute that power, that energy. So I think the second really important aspect would be to make sure that the grid investment is planned and executed in sync with deployment of renewable energy. Otherwise, things would be a challenge. And the third one is probably not going to come as a surprise to anybody on this call is actually the permitting process. I was actually talking to our team recently because I have quite a significant team in our office in Makati here, and they were saying on one project they counted 200 different basically permits they had to secure by the time we get to COD, and that is an impossible gauntlet to run for any company, and it introduces obviously huge delays, but always an element of risk, because until you have your permit, you don't, right? So from a committing capital, early stage, development capital, all the way to construction capital, it's a bit tricky, to handle that, and it's on paper it would seem to be the easiest, obstacles to remove, but in practice, I think we've seen it's not the easiest. But I mean, those I think would be interventions that could make a huge difference. If some of those processes could be streamlined, I think we'll watch the news and see the the urgency, the climate emergency, and I think we need more, but we need faster as well, So I think if there's one plea we would like to make as a player in that space, it would be to really work on on this permitting process, which would I think allow more capital to flow into the market, but also allow for faster implementation of projects. So I guess that would be probably our three suggested points.
Thank you, Arno and Milan.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Arnold. I think key is really the government to step in and enable a little bit more public-private partnership. Key really is again grid infrastructure, and that can be solved by private sector. There are other countries around the globe where investors have also helped on the grid infrastructure level as well. But again, all these policies that you mentioned, they sound very exciting, but in essence, in real life, they really don't work. Because essentially we do see some deployment in the Philippines. I don't know what is expected to be installed this year, but it's definitely going to be in the hundreds of megawatts range, whereby Philippines has really the opportunity to be a gigawatt market easily. So I think the best approach is really top down, to look at what Philippines targets to achieve as a clean energy, what proportion of this should be solar, and based on that, it's very easy to draft regulations that will support the deployment. Again, auctions, for example, have been working in many geographies where you have so-called grid parity. And in Philippines, solar is significantly cheaper than the grid or the cost of electricity from conventional power. So auctioning is really a tool which will enable significant deployment. The question is how the Philippines government can support such a program. And here comes a few question marks to be answered on how the government can help with public land, for example, to enable sites, locations where that will be designated area for renewable energy, something that Korea, for example, has done extremely successfully. Then the guarantees that the government can offer for the private PPAs with all the Meralcos, whether or not they're willing to take certain risk or a certain backup mechanism in order to make those PPAs a little bit more bankable. in the long term. So I guess it's really a commitment that we have to see, and this commitment should come from the government. There is plenty of capital available, plenty of investors looking into the country. Right now, we're in a situation where I don't know whether it's due to COVID, but a lot of corporates, a lot of private investors, a lot of funds are looking into deploying capital in sustainability. I think there is no point of time in the history of mankind that we had more capital available for clean energy as what we have today. So it's really a good time for governments to take advantage on this, to really work together with the private sector to enable this capital to flow.
Thank you, Milan. I think what will also go a long way in developing the RE sector would be the liberalization of ownership of companies that are engaged in the uh, renewable energy development. Because as you know, as most of the people in the webinar know, our constitution limits the foreign ownership in renewable energy projects, in particular solar and wind, uh, to a maximum of 60%. And the remaining 60% is required to be owned under Filipino ownership. In the thermal power sector, there's no such foreign equity limitation, so that we see foreign investors owning up to 100% of thermal power projects. There have been uh, efforts from national government leaders to further liberalize certain sectors in our economy, like public utilities. There are already pending bills, I understand, about close to being approved to liberalize foreign ownership in certain public services. And really, it's a threshold question for many investors, whether they would be amenable to having only 40% equity interest in a solar or wind renewable energy project. By the way, for geothermal and biomass, the Department of Energy has already taken the position that these are not subject to the what we call the 60/40 requirement, and biomass and geothermal can be up to 100% foreign owned. So hopefully the national government. I'm not sure if there's still time, because election is coming. It's about the campaign period. We'll be having a national elections in May of 2022, and the legislators will be busy campaigning already. So hopefully, when the Congress reconstitutes after the elections, that this will be one of their priority measures to liberalize the renewable energy sector in the Philippines. Okay. Um, okay. So the next topic that we'd like to cover would be whether there are upcoming tenders for utility solar and what support developers are expecting from the government. Okay, so Cynthia, I don't think Cynthia has joined us yet. She sent me an email that she was having some technical difficulties. But let me take on this question and give you some comments on this point. So as most of you are watching the Philippine renewable energy market, are probably aware of, the Department of Energy has indicated that it's about to roll out the country's first green energy auction program. So back in 2020, the Department of Energy has already issued a department circular setting out the guidelines on the policy of the green energy auction in the Philippines, or GAAP. Based on news reports, the DOE has set an October 2021 deadline. Basically, actually, it's this supposed to be this month for the country's first green energy auction, which the Department of Energy will be the administering agency. So there have been public consultations that have been conducted by the Department of Energy on the green energy auction program. Basically, this program will provide the framework to meet the required capacity to meet the renewable energy generation target of 35% by 2030. According to the DOE, the program will also increase the renewable portfolio standards allocation for distribution utilities. So as earlier discussed, under the RPS, DUs, electric cooperatives, and retail electricity suppliers are required to source a percentage of electricity requirement from RE sources. And the rate setting under this green energy auction program will be through competitive bidding. It was mentioned that under the 2020 Department Circular, the government indicated that it will seek to increase access to financing of new RE projects and implement the mandate for preferential bias for RE and indigenous sources of energy. Um, Arno and Milan, do you have comments on this point you'd like to share with us?
Sorry, I'm unmuting myself. No, I mean, no additional comments to what you said. I mean, clearly we're seeing the auction, process, kicking off, which is, I mean, quite a common, common direction that most markets are taking, so we're watching that with interest, but no other comments from me, no.
Okay, thank you. And Milan?
Yeah, again, Dennis, it depends on how this will be implemented. We have seen auctions going as low as 1 cent per kilowatt hour in Middle East, and as high as 7, 8, 9 cents in Southeast Asia. Again, really, it depends what is the purpose. If the purpose is to enable capacity, then the government should step in. And you pointed rightly that the big obstacle is the ownership. There is no sufficient, or rather, there is sufficient capital in Philippines alone, but there is no sufficient interest from international investors to team up with local developers or co-investors and share majority. This is really an obstacle. So if really the goal here is to deploy scale, then auctioning as a mechanism is fine, but the devil is in the details. How this will really be implemented is really key. And again, what happens with the land? Who owns the land? How is the land conversion expedited? Where do you connect your project? What is the guarantee that the government is giving to the GENCOs? And what is the access to project financing? Because this also has been in the past a bit of an issue. If there is clear, if these are issues that are clearly recognized, I think an auctioning system can be really successful.
Thank you, Milan. Now, I'd like to ask Arno and Milan, what do you think would be the potential of floating solar projects? What have you seen globally, and what do you think would be the potential here in the Philippines?
Yeah, I mean, floating is one of those exciting kind of new kids on the block, right? For PV. I mean, we have good experience with floating PV. I mean, it obviously was a bit fringe a few years back. I mean, I was involved in a particular project, small scale, only a few megawatts. But the outcome was really positive. I would say obviously we got more capacity from a given kind of piece of land because we could use the water body, which was positive. But what we find, and that's also backed by studies that were done, in Singapore a few years back. There was a research program there. What they found and what we experienced empirically on our project is that there are a few co-benefits. I mean, there is definitely a reduction in evaporation, from your piece of water, which is I think, as someone said, climate change is coming, and if it were a shark, then the teeth of that shark would be water scarcity. And I think that's one of the big challenges, that we're all going to have to be dealing with in the next few decades. So anything that can conserve fresh water, is should be a good thing, and definitely floating PV does help. I mean, we're seeing probably close to 10% reduction in evaporation from this pond where we deployed the PV system. The research in Singapore indicated that there's a reduction in water eutrophication. Basically, there's less, algae growth, in the water body, which is usually good for the ecosystem. You have more oxygen, left in your water. I mean, anecdotally, what we heard from the guys that used to fish on that particular pond is they got more fish after than before. So I guess that's a good sign. We'll take that as a positive, anecdote. And there is obviously some benefit on the PV system performance, because it sits on a mass that's not going to heat up anywhere near as much as, say, a hot tin roof if you're going rooftop PV, possibly even a ground mount. So obviously, lots of numbers being thrown around. The floating PV industry is very bullish, not surprisingly, a bit conflicted as well. But I mean, there should be some benefit, and I wouldn't want to comment on what those benefits would be here, because it really depends on a lot of other conditions. But it's definitely not bad for a PV system to sit on water as opposed to sitting on a metal sheet building or on the ground. And it does, it's just a good use of the space. So overall, we'd say, I mean, we're quite positive on floating PV. I mean, in the case of Laguna Lake, I mean, it just releases huge amount of acreage, which is good to take, because again, there's only so much land we have to play with, and there'll be more and more pressure on using land either for reforestation or agricultural production. So anything that can be done with water bodies should be welcome. On the downside, I mean, it's still a bit of a new segment, so there's still some way to go on cost. I mean, we're seeing the cost curve obviously improve over time. It's definitely better now than it was, say, 4 or 5 years ago, but there's still some way to go. I mean, as that particular segment scales up, we're expecting to see significant cost reduction on the specific mounting system for floating PV, and the bankability as well. I mean, I can tell you a few banks we spoke to a couple of years back were looking at it with a lot of anxiety. So I think we aren't there yet. I mean, it's not an asset class within PV that is as mature from a financing perspective as others, but we're getting there. As I said earlier, we have great ambitions in multiple geographies, and definitely in the Philippines. So we are overall quite bullish on floating, quite positive.
Thank you, Arno. Milan.
Dennis, sir, sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted to know, can we take the Q&As now?
Do we have a little bit more time for the panel, or do we need to move on to the Q&A now?
Sir, we have to move with the Q&A asked by the audience.
Okay. Yeah, sure, Priyanshi.
So I'll just display the question on the screen, and any one of you can take it up.
Milan or no, anyone who wants to respond to this question? It's a bit it's rather specific. I'm sure the data would be available in the Philippine Department of Energy.
Yeah, I don't have a specific number to provide. I'm afraid, Frank. It's it depends a lot of factors. And there's quite a few bits that we don't have visibility on, so I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Yeah, yeah. Just to comment on that, I've seen a bit of M&A activity in solar rooftop uh, with with the big the traditional oil and gas majors expanding expanding into or investing into rooftop solar projects. So I've seen quite a bit of transactions in that space in the past 2 years. So I think, and then I've also seen some consolidation in terms of the players in the rooftop solar sector here in the Philippines. So I think there's a bit of interest among investors in the solar rooftop industry here in the Philippines. Okay, Priyanshi, we can move on to the next question.
Yes, sir.
How do you balance the need to develop utility solar farms and the land for agriculture? Uh, what guidelines? It's truncated. Priyanshi, can you scroll down?
Sorry, sir, I couldn't get that.
Um, it's truncated. The question. We couldn't see the last part of the. I couldn't see the last part of the question. So I think it's basically asking what are the guidelines in terms of balancing the need to develop utility solar farms and the land for agriculture.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Just do you want
yes,
to?
go ahead, Arnav. Yes, please.
Yeah, and I mean, just one or two observations there. But it's as I mentioned earlier. I mean, we only have finite resources, whether it's land or water or anything else really. And I think more and more we're going to be seeing multi-use or combined use of resources, right? So you look at say offshore wind. There's actually a lot of pilots going on today with combining offshore wind with potential ocean farming, as people call it, whether it's algae or macroalgae or shellfish or whatever, to actually make use that it's in some countries in northern Europe, you don't get an offshore wind permit, you get actually a multi-use permit. It's almost embedded in the legislation now. So if you take that to ground mount PV systems, we are seeing a lot of development in the agri PV space, as it's called, combining the use now. Multiple shades of gray there. Agri PV or combining agriculture and PV can be having a PV system primarily, and then allowing some stuff to grow on it, and having managed grazing, which probably is good for carbon sequestration in the soil. So some companies actually even market that as a carbon capture, because you increase the carbon content in the soil. So that's primarily PV with some amount of animal, if you want farming there. At the other end, you have primarily farmland where you can put some amount of PV, and you have those projects again in Europe, where you have vineyards that are putting some PV panels there, and but that's kind of the opposite, direction. There's a lot of projects going off in Europe. There's one in Spain, I read about recently, where they actually are encouraging the growth of aromatic, plants, so that they can actually help pollinator insects, So, but that's kind of a secondary, consideration, So it's, I guess, the challenge for combining agricultural activities and ground mount PV is the complexity that it introduces to the deal. The fundamentals are probably good, because you get, better bang for your buck. You have a given amount of land, and you do more with it, and it's better for the product, society, and even in terms of acceptance. But it does introduce complexity into your transaction, because you have much more stakeholders, much more things to consider. But the studies that have been carried out are good. I mean, it's found that actually some crops benefit. So you actually get more yield from your crop, by deploying some amount of PV on that area of land. It's better for water retention. Again, I mean, your ground doesn't dry out as much as if you didn't have some amount of PV panels on top of it. I mean, Macquarie has got a 2 gigawatt program going off in Europe for agri PV, in France, in partnership with EDF, so there's big numbers being thrown around for this combination, and it's something that should be considered. And in markets where land is super constrained, you look at Japan or Korea, it's actually quite common practice, to combine the two. Sometimes agriculture in the broader sense can be even like, ponds, for, shrimp farming or fish farm, but it's some kind of, food production, and that's combined with PV as well. So definitely it's something that I think, going to see more and more, and consideration should be given to it, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's an area that let's say our agricultural schools would need to focus on possible agri PV projects, and which crops that are plant or grown here in the Philippines would coexist with PV projects. Milan, you'd like to comment also on that question?
Yeah, back to the floating solar topic. I think Philippines has something like 1,000 dams and reservoirs. This is how you save land for agriculture. Again, agro solar is perfect. It doesn't work for all sorts of agriculture. There are certain cultures and crops that don't grow underneath panels. But yes, it's really a function of a solution in some countries which have lack or rather significant exposure to agriculture. But yes, floating comes in the picture. This is where Philippines can really be. It has all the macroeconomic conditions for big deployment of floating solar. We have a lot of hydro, which can be easily combined with solar energy. We have, again, Philippines also has significant access to water, to offshore water, and this is where I think offshore floating solar future is. Future of floating solar is really offshore, because that's where you can really deploy in a gigawatt scale. This can be the next mini industry within the solar industry, as offshore wind, for example, has become significant and a totally separated industry. So, and back to Arnold's point about financing, yes, that probably is still not considered a very safe asset class by the bankers, but that's just a matter of time. There are projects already that are operational, and as long as we receive the critical minimum amount of information and data on their performance and how they affect the marine life and everything else, I think bank financing will really enable a big development of floating industry.
Thank you, Milan. Yeah, Priyanshi, we can go to the next question. We
Sure.
still have time for Q&A.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Without fast tracking BSS guidelines and follow-up action from ERC revenue model hybrid. Could you read the rest of the question, Priyanshi?
Sorry, sir.
It's only up to what's your in my screen. Oh, here. Okay, got it. I can scroll down. Okay. What's
Yes.
your view on curtailment risk for solar utility scale projects coming online in next 2 to 3 years? Okay. Okay, Arno and Milan, would you like to comment on this?
I mean, first of all, I need to remind us all I have a hard stop in 4 minutes. So I'm going to have to disappear after this probably. But I mean, I think it's back to my earlier point that one of the three key elements, I think that, intervention that could help, the deployment of, PV in the Philippines would be proactive planning of the grid infrastructure, and I think chances are, that there's a risk there. It depends a lot on where your project is, where you connect, who you connect to, and, your evacuation arrangement, if you want. So, I think it's hard to give a blanket answer as to how big a risk there is, but it's my perspective is it more flexibility in the grid will be required sooner than later, and I think if anything, yes, indeed, the ERC should fast track frameworks and regulation that would allow for deployment of energy storage. We're actively looking at a few projects. There's across Asia, there's a whole range of behind the meter, or grid scale, storage projects that we're involved with, and I think those take time. And if anything, yeah, they should be fast tracked and prioritized. Otherwise, it's we end up, as Milan says, with wasted renewable energy, which is the last thing we want, because it stifles future investment, and it's a missed opportunity for everybody. So I think, yeah, anything that could be done to anticipate and speed up deployment of energy storage should be done, definitely.
Thank you, Arno. Milan, would you like to comment on that as well?
No, I don't have any further comments on this.
Right. Maybe just to add, in terms of battery energy storage system, I think there's a lot of potential in the Philippines developing this battery storage industry, because the Philippines actually is one of the largest deposits of nickel in the world. It used to be that we were the number one supplier of nickel ore to China. We're neck and neck with Indonesia. And Indonesia is already developing its energy storage projects there. They have one already with between LG Chem and Hyundai for batteries for electric vehicles. But uh, the battery energy storage system for renewable energy systems can also be developed, and there are already uh, companies here in the nickel sector in the Philippines that are looking into it. So that will, I think that will provide a competitive advantage to the Philippines, considering if, especially if the batteries are built here. That will, I think that will provide some cost advantages to the Philippines. So Priyanshi, I think we're short on time, and I know Arno has a hard stop at 4 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
So shall we end our panel discussion?
Yes, sir. So I would like to thank all the panelists. You were absolutely outstanding. Thank you so much for the terrific and very professional example of a moderator, Dennis, sir. Special thanks to you. It was a pleasure having you in such a well planned and high energy panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priyanshi,
Thank
and
you.
thank you so much, Arno and Milan.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Milan.
Thank you.
You have a good day.
Good day. Bye.
Welcome back, attendees. It's time now for our second session. Let me see how many people are active with us. Please show your thumbs up and let me know who all are with me. Great to see the positive response. The audience is really excited as I am. Now it's time to have our much awaited panel discussion for the session of the big tech trends shaping large scale solar. And in the esteemed panel, we have with us Mr. Daniel Liang from US, Mr. Ajay Deepak from SMA Solar, Mr. Chris Vincent Alidon from Soul Energy, Ms. Spencer Screw from Goodwe, and Mr. Jose Victor Tees from City Code. The discussion will be led by Janelle Sir. Welcome all the panelists on the screen, and I'm handing the session to Janelle Sir now. Thank you so much. Janelle Sir, you can take over.
Hi. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Daniel Liang in UL. I'm so proud to be appointed as the chairing person for this session. So this session will be mainly talking about how is the future solar project looks like, and especially when we have more and more new technologies coming in, how will these new technologies will shape our future chain. For example, the technology including the new type of inverter, new solar PV modules, and all other technology, for example, the energy storage and etc. etc. So I think before we get started, probably let every one of us have a quick self introduction. Probably let me do the first one. So yeah, my name is Daniel Liang. With UL. UL is in case any one of you haven't heard of UL. UL stand for Underwriter Laboratory. Is the U.S. company in the world, has been in the world for more than 150 years. So in the past, UL has been known as the safety and the testing certification bodies. So they are a lot of the more than 1,000 of the UL standards in the world. But in the past 1 or 2 decades, UL has expanded the business into the renewable energy advisory area. So the team is supporting the solar and the wind and the energy storage project by providing also project advisory services. For example, the due diligence, for example, the owners engineering, lenders technical advisor. So we work with those the inverter. We work with the investor. We work with the owner side, work with the developer side on the ground of the solar and the wind and energy storage project side. So I'm personally looking after the energy storage advisory. I'm based in Singapore, and I have a very good team based around the APEC. I have team in India, in China, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Philippines. So we are very happy to join this Philippine Solar Week, and we are very the team is very pleased to meet all of you here. So we really look forward to working with everyone here in the short term. Yeah. So thank you very much. That's my short introduction. So can I point to the can I pass my mic to the next person for the self introduction? I see on the screen. How about Chris?
Hi.
Chris, can you be the next one?
Of course, of course. Good afternoon. Thank you, Daniel, and hello, everyone. My name is Chris, and I'm currently working for an EPC company. So in the Philippines, it's called Sol Energy, and we we've done several systems across the entire application landscape, from very small hybrid systems up to utility scale solar plants. And right now we're doing some big solar farms, and we've been here for the past, I think, close to 10 years now in the Philippines, as a company, as an EPC for solar. Personally, I've been here for 6 years, going 7. And yeah, just happy to be here, and wonderful to be given the opportunity and to share our insights.
Daniel, I think you're in mute.
Oh, right. Thank you. Thank you for reminding. Next one, can I pass the mic to AJ?
Okay.
AJ on the screen. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. My name is Ajay Deepak. So I'm working as a project manager in SMA India, based out of headquarters in Mumbai. So we support India as well as Southeast Asia market. So in terms of SMA, most people are aware it's a 40 years old brand, which is in solar inverters, headquarters in Germany. And we have multiple projects already installed in India and Southeast Asian countries, including Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore. The latest, some of the projects were like including storage inverters in Philippines for supporting the grid of more than 100 megawatt. So this is one of the projects in Philippines to support the grid. So, and we already have many solar projects, including storage, covered in this region. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you very much, AJ. Next one, can I pass the mic to yours?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I'm Jose Victor Tebes. I'm working with Citicore. Citicore is it's solar PV solar developer company. So we develop also utility scales projects for PV plant and also for commercial rooftops. Up to this moment, our total installed capacity is around 170 megawatt peak. And we have so many pipeline projects also for utility scale PV plants also here in the Philippines. I'm a senior project manager for Citicore.
Thank you so much, Jos. And the next one, can we go to Spencer?
Hello, everyone. I'm Spencer from Goodwe. I may give a brief introduction of Goodwe. So Goodwe is a leading inverter manufacturer, and we also provide these renewable energy solutions. And Goodwe starts our business in 2010, and we've been developing in a very dramatic speed. And we also have ranked by the #1 for the hybrid inverters. So we are very welcome to answer any questions regarding the inverters and also providing the entire solar power plants design solutions. And for me, I'm now supporting the pre-sale services in the Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Spencer. And next one, I think we have everyone did this self-introduction, right?
Yes.
Everyone has done the
Yes, so
self-introduction,
you have
right?
covered everyone. Now you can start with the panel discussion.
Yeah, I think everyone is getting excited and I can't wait to go into the panel discussion right now. So I think our session is talking about how the technologies and how other perspective will shape the future solar. So it's very glad that today we have the people from the developers side, we have people from the EPC company. We have the panelists from the inverter supplier and also the panel supplier. So these are really the people on the ground. So I think that we definitely will have a very fruitful discussion on this. So I would like to ask the first question to drive our discussion, our session move forward. How will everyone see our future solar project or future solar farm look like? So the see no the place I'm the point I'm coming from is so we see the utility scale solar PV project getting huge and huge, and all these the efficiencies, all these efficiency is getting improved further and further. But in the meantime, in some countries, for example, in Vietnam, because of this a solar energy penetration to the grid is getting increased in very fast speed. Then they also create some issues to the grid. So there are also some of the impact to the grid operators. So all these bring people to think about how our future solar project will look like in terms of the scales, in terms of the new technologies, how we look like in 5 years or 10 years down the road. Can anyone volunteer to answer this question?
Okay.
I can go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, AJ. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's okay. So maybe I will say in terms of next 3 to 5 years, how the large scale PV projects looks like. So it depends on the countries. Basically, the renewable energy penetration, how much it gets achieved. So that will drive how much bigger the large scale projects will look like. If there is more demand, the project size are going to be more bigger. If the demands are less, automatically the size of the projects will come down and it will shift towards rooftop projects. But in terms of large scale projects, that some of the major trends that we can expect, what we can see in next 5 years is the market or the PV projects will look like higher DC size with lesser AC capacities, because the grid will be smaller. So you have to limit the AC capacities, but the DC capacities cannot, no need to limit the DC capacities here. So automatically this will drive towards higher DC ratio of like more than 150%, you can say. And further to that, this will also drive the storage market because of high DC ratio. This will also drive towards higher DC coupled projects, you can say, but not immediately. But maybe you can see it definitely in next 3 to 5 years, because the battery prices are driven mainly by the electric vehicle market. So that will influence the addition of adding the storage to the existing PV projects or planning stage, you can say. And the another important trend, how the developers see in terms of O&M perspective, is they want to have the plants with more automated stuffs, like lesser maintenance on manpower perspective. So they will go towards artificial intelligence based drone technology. So that will help the developers to find the fault on the module level. At present, with string inverters, they can find fault only at the string level, not on the module level. So there will be kind of a startup technologies will evolve from other industries on the drone, and that will help to develop further technologies in the drone to have AI-based faster plant maintenances. And plus, additionally, we can see that higher DC voltages in the PV module, that will drive the entire industry and other balance of systems like inverters, trackers, and others towards that day. So wherever the module technology follows, the other components will follow to that. So these are the major things we can expect, as I see, in next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Can I share also, Daniel? Okay. So maybe more for 5 to 10 years, expectation for large-scale solar plants. We have to look for also for the proactive support for power grids. That's a main problem now. PV plants will shift from grid adapting to grid supporting. So over the next 5 years, maybe PV plants must gradually evolve from adapting to the power grid to supporting the power grid. So inverters should possess capabilities such as wide short circuit duration, adaptability, capability to control harmonic current, and fast frequency regulation, which are necessary for a grid connection. That is very important because inverters is the one is something like it's a brain in a solar farm, which is very important also for the grid stabilization. And also for digitalization. Yeah, I also heard about AJ Deepak said more than 90% of our global PV plants will be digitalized, maybe from 5 to 10 years from now. So despite the booming global PV market, there are still many dumb devices in PV plants now, from power generation to communications. So these devices cannot be effectively monitored, nor can they provide, fault alarm, something like that. With the rapid development of digital technologies, such as 5G and cloud, it is expected that more than 90% of our PV plants will be fully digitalized by something like 2025, making it possible for PV plants to be simple, intelligent, and efficiently manageable.
Yeah, I can follow that as well, Daniel. I completely agree with two of my industry partners here. In the Philippines right now, there's a trend where the DCAC ratio, as Ajay said, has been breaching the 1.5 mark, somewhere between 1.53 and 1.65. So that's very true. I agree with that. Also, with the information about the power grid. So my take on that is right now with the subscription of the hosting capacities at the lower bus levels of 13.8 and 69 kV and even 115 kV. In terms of siting these power plants in places that have available hosting capacity, uh, they're now at 230 kV substations, and for that to happen commercially, for that to be commercially viable, these systems must have a minimum critical size, if you will. We're probably looking at larger systems of 150 to 250, 300 megawatt AC. So right now in the Philippines, my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the biggest ones are, I think, 150 combined across several projects in a single location and a single interconnection. So we'll probably be breaching that size as well. I think there will also be an adoption of hybrid plants, like what Javik said earlier. In the Philippines right now, the solar and batteries are being developed separately by different entities. I think in the future there will be a time where they will be developed jointly, or already being developed jointly, at least on paper, under consideration, where the power offtakes are now more dependable. Previously, we're just solar is just limited to dispatching whenever it's generating, but with these hybrid technologies, there may be more dependable power offerings of like 50% capacity factor across 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. with the appropriate system architecture. So yeah, bigger systems definitely, and more complex systems.
Thank you so much for I heard a lot of interesting points input here. Sorry, yeah, maybe Spencer, you have some more inputs.
Yeah, thanks,
Yes,
everyone. I agree with your ideas, and as like Jost have mentioned, inverter is like a brand in the PV system. So from my side, I will just talk some from the inverter perspectives. So I think in the large scale solar plants, it will look more like centralized for the placement of the inverters and the substations. So there will be like a certain location for all the inverter activities. So actually we can integrate the inverters, transformers, and the switchgear on the skid. And so it will be more convenient for the operation and maintenance. And also talking about the operation and maintenance, I think I also very agree with what Jay have mentioned, like these smart tools like the artificial intelligence will be applied to the larger scale solar plants. For example, the functions like the smart IV diagnosis that can help us to locate the fault accurately, and also it can help to lower the maintenance cost and also the operation and maintenance workload down to minutes. And another trend is that it is the increasing demand for the safety level of the large-scale power plants. So we have, for the inverters, we have developed the functions like the string level monitoring and the smart or like the rapid shutdown functions and the AFCIs. So all these functions could be the like a standard for the large-scale solar plants. So I think the trend of the large-scale solar plants will be mainly focused on the inverter power level upgrading and also the larger sub-array sizes, and will have a more completed SCADA system for the monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. I really heard a lot of interesting points here. So I heard the RJ talking about the new technologies, for example, using a drone for the maintenance, with the integrate with an energy storage for the solar farm, and also the new type of the checkers and to improve the solar efficiencies. And I heard George talking about the inverters, and the inverters to provide the grid support functions. Yeah, this is very interesting point, a very important point for us. So when my team provide the project when my team provide the project technical advisory services, we especially look at whether those utility solar scale inverter whether it has complied with the international inverter standards in terms of the grid support function, for example, the UL 1741 supplement A, this type of the standard. And then if the inverter has to comply with this type of standard in order to provide the grid support functions, then which is very critical to the grid. And then I also heard the Chris talking about the DC-AC ratios, even up to 1.5 in Philippines now. that really attract my attention. So, because usually I've seen the DC-AC ratio and the 1.2 or even slightly above 1.2. But the 1.5 is, it's very interesting to me. And also, Chris also mentioned a hybrid plant together with the ESS. And yeah, these are very, and also Spencer mentioned about the digitalizations and all these trends. I think this will definitely shape our the future trend for the utility scale solar plant. Then all this when all this come to my mind, and my next question would like to ask now, how about the cost? With all this new technology, with some of the technology will bring down the cost. For example, the more efficient, the modules efficiency, and also the solar modules price. And some of other technologies will increase the overall cost. For example, integrating the energy storage, or using the more advanced checkers, and or maybe the digitalization, the AI functions into the drone. So when we put in all these interesting stuff into the utility scale solar farm. How will it affect the overall cost, especially in the system all-in cost? How will it impact? Can I have your thoughts as well?
Okay. So, so in terms of price, if you say that the major driving factor here is a module prices or for the project cost, remaining balance of systems are hardly 5% for each components like inverters, inverters or trackers. So that changes in term when you introduce new technologies in other balance of system, that may not impact on the project cost more. But when you have the higher price in the modules, that will drive the project cost to higher level compared to the balance system cost. So by introducing new technologies in other components, I don't see a major effect on the price on the projects on overall perspective, but it will definitely help leverage cost of energy to come down. Example, higher overloading is driven not by any driven nothing but driven by simply the fact that the model prices are coming down. Till last year that was lower, so that was driving towards higher overloading, plus to achieve the better levelized cost of energy. So the whatever the extra DC capacity you put, there's no need to add any AC components to that. So automatically the extra project cost gets reduced. That will increase your that will give better levelized cost of energy. So that is driven naturally by the industry, how the model is getting affected. So maybe for next 1 or 2 years, since model prices are higher, we may not have higher DC-AC ratio. But once the supply chain improves, the model price will come down. Definitely, that will have higher overloading, and the price will further come down. At the same time, the other component, AI technologies and everything will further improve the maintenance cost of the inverter projects, the O&M cost, you can say. So definitely, that will give a savings to the customers or the plant owners.
Sorry, when you saying a higher overloading, do you refer to a higher DC-AC ratio?
Yes, higher DC-AC ratio.
Okay,
that is,
then.
Yes, please.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So that is purely driven by the module prices and the tariffs, the energy tariff offered on the project, specific to the projects. That when the tariff goes lower, that will push the developers to go for higher DC-AC ratio, and the confidence in the projects. So once market gets mature, the confidence on the projects will go higher, or technologies will go higher. That will also push towards higher DC-AC ratio. So that is how step by step, in last 5-10 years, 1:1 ratio has reached up to 1.5, 1.6%, 1.6 times now.
I see.
I can take off from Ajay's answer there with a specific focus on the modules, and I'll have to preface my answer by saying that.
Hello, Chris.
Chris, you're lost. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe he has some
I
connection
believe
issue.
Chris sir has some connectivity issue.
Yeah.
You can proceed with other speakers.
Okay. For Ajay Deepak's mentioning about, yes, maybe for the capex, the capital expenditure, no. Yeah, module is very one of the biggest, for the budgeting for the solar farm. But when we embed new technologies, when we embed new technologies like for AI or drones, something like that, no, maybe for the long run, our operation expenses for wide-scale utility solar farm will be reduced. Okay, so that is very important also.
Because you save the manpower.
Yes, that's right.
You save the manpower for doing solar farm inspection, all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
So sorry, I may have been cut off earlier.
Yes.
Yeah,
Please, you can resume.
Third world internet. Okay, I'll just take off from what Ajay said earlier about the pricing with a specific focus on the modules. And I'll have to preface my answer by saying that there's a lot of things that affect the component pricing right now, like raw material pricing, supply chain, logistics, increase in costs as well. But particularly on the modules, if we were to count all things constant and just check into the developing technology. 2 years ago, we were looking at PERC being the emerging cell technology that offered a higher wattage than the conventional uh, polysilicon, right? So back then, 60 cell panels were around 250 watts. And then PERC came in, we had 300 watt, 320 watt panels. And I think we're coming into this new era where there may be a breakthrough with the HJT panels, which, as I understand, the 60 cell ones have capacities of 380 watts. So more wattage with a fixed balance of system cost. It does have the potential to affect, driving down the dollar per watt. That ultimately what most investors look at is the dollar per watt. Although they should be looking at the dollar per kilowatt hour. But I think, just my small contribution to this question is the HJT might be more ubiquitous in the next few years.
Thank you very much, everyone. I still want to go back to this interesting question on this DCAC, higher DCAC ratio. So I believe this is driven by the coming down module price. So that's why you can actually forego the peak power generation of the panels, just to get the wider shoulder of the powers on the wider shoulder on the panels. So actually you don't have to. You can forego the peak generation in order to get the more energy output. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And in terms of the EPCs and I'm also curious to ask. So now seems if the entire system cost is keep coming down because of these new technologies, and then how about the profit from the EPC company? What is the main so-called the stumbling block on the difficulties or the for the EPC companies? Is there any the main barriers for the EPC company to overcome? Can I have your input here?
Maybe I'll give a short comment. The prices right now are actually going up, but not because of components being introduced. It's more because of these market events within countries that manufacture the majority of the components of these solar plants. So they're going up. Yeah, it has gone up by maybe 20% since when it was lowest. So there is that. And connected to that, this is actually my answer to the question. Is the challenge for EPCs right now is because of very rapid fluctuations in pricing. It's so hard to give long-term valid tenders, and we as the EPC, because we give fixed contracts, we do take on some of the supply chain risk in terms of the price fluctuations. So what you see now in most EPC and supply contracts is that there is a clause for adjustment, which developers are very averse to, because it's not to their interest. But yeah, that has been the one of the stumbling blocks experienced by the EPC.
I see. So you mean they are well, on one side, the system price is going up probably temporarily because of this supply chain issue, and which may impair the EPG's profit, right? And another side is that there are a lot of the uncertainties regarding long-term regulation, long-term market trends, and which create many uncertainties for the EPC companies. Right. Thank you very much, Chris. How about the technology-wise? Probably because as an engineer, I especially interested in the new technologies. So since the day we have the panelists from Google, from SMA. So I'd like to ask especially about the new technology, the new breakthrough technologies on the inverter side. What do you see these new breakthrough inverter technologies will improve the utility scale solar farm, or will shape the future trend here? And yeah, we start from Spencer.
Yes. Thanks for asking. Like as the technology breakthroughs in the inverters actually is driven by the development of the PV modules, as we've discussed, like the trend of the large current PV modules, such as the 210 millimeter and 182 millimeter PV modules. And also our technology is driven by the target of lower the LCOE. And I think the most typical technology breakthrough is increase our inverter power level for the utility scale, so that we can invest fewer inverters in one large scale power plants. So actually we can save the cost of the cables. And also from the DC side, the maximum DC input voltage are increasing, so that we can have more PV panels in under one MPPT, and so it can help us to save the DC cable investment. And from the AC side, we are now also increasing the AC output voltage accordingly. So it can help to lower the cable loss from the inverter to the transformer. And also it can help to increase lower our investments to the transformers. And another technology improvement is that the string inverters are now having more protection functions integrated inside. So we can integrate the functions like the SVG protection, anti-PIDs, and the SPD protections. So before that, those functions need to be realized with the external devices. But now we are integrated into one inverters. So we can actually save more cost for the EPCs. And in the future, I think the string inverters can be more functional and more centralized, so that we can save the cost of the external device and also for the initial investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spencer.
Okay. Thanks, Spencer, for the detailed explanation. So I would like to add some more points to what Spencer's mentioned. So as she rightly mentioned about the inverter sizes are getting bigger. This is mainly driven by the module capacities going to higher capacities. Now, today we are talking about 700 watt peak panel. Maybe in another 2 years, it may be up to 1 kilowatt also, possibilities there. Plus, the technology of voltage in terms of 1500 volt can be shifted towards 2000 volt. So again, that will change the inverter design to higher capacity. But you can see one simple trend here. The string inverters started with, for example, of 50 kilowatt or 100 kilowatt in a large scale projects are now on 300 kilowatt. And this can go higher up to 500 kilowatt. That shows that string inverters are converted into a mini centralized system. So as Spencer mentioned, the centralized architecture is going to be the future. So this will also help automatically. So instead of distributing the inverters on all over the plant, this 500 kilowatt, for example, I'm just saying an example, in future after three years, maybe we will have 500 kilowatt capacity inverters. So that inverters will be kept on a centralized location for the better and faster maintenance perspective. And the markets are going to demand more towards faster response time, what Jose has mentioned, in terms of precise controlling perspective. So for that, the inverter has to be very near to the grid so that the communication is have very smaller distances, so that the inverter can respond within the milliseconds to support as per the grid request. Plus, once the battery price comes down, that will help for the storage integration. To have storage integrations, we need PV inverters in a single location, not in a distributed locations. So now the question comes is, what happens to the module string level fault monitoring? So that will be answered by the drone technologies, because in string inverters or with string architecture, you can see the fault only on the string level, not on the module level. So once you find string level faults, so still you need a manual scanning of thermal scanning for the module level fault for the particular string. But when you have AI based drone technology, that will survey the entire plant within 15 to 30 minutes through thermal scanning, and the fault can be precisely find out on the module level instead of going for a string level. So that will change the entire way how the design of the PV plants are done today to a centralized architecture in future. So storage integration, precise and faster grid response time, higher overloading, and drone technology, these things will entirely evolve as a full ecosystem and drive the industry in next 3 to 5 years.
Very interesting to me. As the string inverters capacity keep going up, is it possible that in future there will be harder and harder to differentiate in a string inverter and a central inverter?
Yeah.
So it all depends on the architecture, how we design the PV plants.
Yeah.
Whether you distribute inverters on a PV plant and spread across all over the field, then it will be considered as a string. But the same inverter, if you're keeping it in a single location, like multiple inverters in single location, like 20 or 30 inverters single location, it is called mini central or centralized architecture approach.
Yeah. Yeah, in the past, there will always be the interesting discussion on whether to choose a central inverter or the string inverters. And each one has pros and cons. But I think in the current utility solar market, the majority is still the central inverter. Am I right to say that?
Yeah.
It is varying for the market. So if you go for 100, for example, if you take America, where the project sizes are minimum 100 megawatt, so there you will go always for central inverters.
Central inverter.
But if a country is small and if the requirement of the projects are maximum 10 megawatt or 15 megawatt in a scale, average scales, then you will go for string inverters.
Yeah.
So the project sizes and the experience of the customers or the owners of the plant will define which inverters they want to go for this.
Exactly.
We're actually building a 100 megawatt plant using string inverters right now.
100 megawatt plant.
Yeah, and I agree that the cost is a big factor in determining the inverter type. But I think the reason why some developers choose central inverters is because they need to aggressively hit certain performance ratios, especially in terrains that are not conducive to central inverter technologies. So uneven ground, multiple orientations.
Thank you very much, Chris. Actually, I was about to ask your opinion from the EPC side. How do you see the string and the central inverter?
Yeah. Also, I've experienced also one of my projects in Vietnam.
Yes,
also,
please.
yeah, Daniel. Yeah, we use string inverters also, and string inverters now are what we call smart inverters now. With higher efficiency rating already, something like 99% already. They reach 99% efficiency, and most new smart inverters now. They have also what we call the smart IV curve diagnosis. So you can, for the IV curve, for diagnosing IV curve, it is embedded already in, for the string inverters. Yeah, for the smart inverters also. And also regarding for the grid support, like low voltage ride through, that is very important also for the smart inverters. They have also increased, they have also increased what we call the time that the low voltage ride through they maintain something like 3 seconds or something like 150 milliseconds, 150 to 300 milliseconds, something like that.
Depending on the
So
site.
yeah, there's a big breakthrough on string inverters nowadays.
Right. Yeah, I think that the string inverter will definitely be more and more preferred by the EPC and the developer companies. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, yeah. Especially when you're using a central inverter, and when one central inverter bugs down, so there's, let's say, when you're connecting for 6.4 megawatts for that central inverter, and it will be, that central inverter will have a failure. So
the reliability issue.
Yeah, your losses for that one is so big. Whereas when we're using as string inverters connected for something like 300 kilowatts also only, so only if our losses for, let's say, if one string or two string inverters back down, so there's no much big losses for for the plant.
Right. Yeah. Then you only need to replace the individual string. Then you will get the plant back to work.
Yes, it's very easy to replace. It's very easy to replace string inverters than central inverters.
Yeah. For the string inverter, yeah, I've seen the plant operators, they keep certain numbers on the string inverter as a spare part in the warehouse. So the site operators, they can do it by them. They can replace it by themselves. Don't have to kind of call the supplier engineer to come in.
That's right.
Yeah. And this is also the big advantage. How about we have covered the inverters. How about other technologies? For example, since today many people mentioned about the energy storage system integration, and actually myself, I'm looking after the energy storage system and also the project advisories for UL. So I'm especially interested to hear your views on the energy storage integration part. So for now, although the storage, for like the lithium battery system price is in the past has been coming down quite a lot. Although recently there is some price spike due to the supply chain issue, but in the long run, the price of the ESS will still go down. However, the price and the cost of the energy storage is still add the very heavy burden on the capex to the solar to the utility solar project, and we don't see, to be honest, we don't see many utility scale solar project has the direct integration with the ESS system and the point of contact. And then this also create more and more issues to the power grid operators. So like for example, in Taiwan, we see the power grid. We see the Thai Power has the couples of the ESS tenders to encourage or to force the people to install the energy to utility scale ESS in order to tackle this impact from the renewable energies. And so in short words, there are different kind of trends happening here. There are trends on the price. There are interesting trends on the regulation framework, on the cost. So since today we have the developers and the EPC, we have the technology suppliers. I just want to hear your view on regarding the ESS technology. And probably I can start from the developer or EPC side. How do you see the ESS integration or utility scale solar farm in the next 3 to 5 years?
Maybe I can start as an EPC.
Yes, please.
I mentioned earlier that there's developments separately, meaning ESS is being developed separately, and solar farms are being developed separately right now in the Philippines, and there are considerations for joining them both. What I think about it is, I hope we can get a project for it. It's interesting for us. Maybe I can share what I think are the roadblocks to it right now. Batteries on their own. Solar farms are quite known business propositions already in the Philippines, and there is a level of confidence and acceptance, in terms of it being a viable investment. With battery systems, though, individually, the current commercial arrangement that it can only make sense in is if it were providing ancillary service. And the challenge with that is, contracts are very limited, and you'd have to build them first to qualify for them. Any of my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong. So there is a lot of inherent risk. When you combine them together, the cost on the battery side severely affects the tariff depending on how you structure it. For example, if you were a developer wanting to integrate solar and storage together, you'd probably be offering somewhere north of 12 US dollar cents as a tariff to your off-taker, which is significantly higher than most tariffs that an off-taker can obtain in the market. So if there are regulatory policies and policy mechanisms that enable that, where there is a need to source from renewable energy like the RPS, but it's still it's the hurdle, right? It's the hurdle for both the off-taker and the developer, that very high price point that we're trying to that we still have if we combine these two technologies. So that's my side.
Definitely will drive up the LCOE.
Yeah. I can share also some thoughts for that one.
Yes, yours, please.
Yeah. With the greater penetration of new energy sources, like for renewable power grids, we'll have increasingly stringent requirements, especially for frequency regulation and most especially for peak shaving. You know, maybe it is projected that energy storage will work in tandem with PV systems, and maybe it will become a critical component. So the proportion maybe by 2025, PV, battery energy storage systems might exceed in a faster pace because due to for power grids requirement, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Recently, I have heard some of the some new regulations in countries like China, in which the government has the regulator has enforced that when utility solar farm solar project reach a certain go above a certain scale, you have to integrate a certain amount of the battery system in order to tackle the intermittency issue. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to add some more points.
Yes, please, Ajay.
As an inverter's perspective. So basically, in storage, there are two types of projects you can see. One is DC couple or AC couple. So AC couple is driven by the grid operators requirement. So there should be a RFQ that should be floated by the grid operators in terms of auxiliary services like frequency regulations or reactive power support. So these are all driven by kind of a policy or mandates of the grid operators. So that is the driving factor for the AC couple. Coming back to the DC couple, where it is mainly for energy shift or power shift applications. So there, the driving factors, though there may be policies and everything, but the investment costs are very high because the battery capacity is required for the DC coupling is costlier because you need to have more energy to the battery, more capacity of batteries are needed. Once the maybe actually we were expecting the battery price to come down further, reach very lower point in 22 or 23, but due to supply chain concern or logistical issues, there's a demand is going higher in the EV industries, so that is driving or reduce it's become what are the price they expected has not achieved. So maybe in another 3 to 5 years, the price will come down further and new technologies in the batteries will evolve. That will drive the DC coupling industry in the storage. Absolutely, there is no difference in terms of which is better, you can say. Either DC coupling or AC coupling is better if you ask. Both of them are same. The inverters, the DC-DC converters have same mature industries, but the requirement of the industries are entirely different. So AC coupling is driven by the grid policies. DC coupling is driven by the battery price as well as the business cases. The biggest advantage, if you see after 10 years, you can expect is more DC coupling projects than the AC coupling projects, because there will be separate private PPAs will be there. So the developers will generate energy for based on the time shift applications like evening demand or early morning generation demand requirement. That will drive towards DC coupling applications. So there's no need for the push from the government, or there's no need to have some kind of an RFQ or separate PPAs needed for the energy applications. So that will automatically pick up in terms of DC coupling systems. So that is why it is taking some more time for the energy projects to pick up, but definitely there will be more projects in future. But the ratio will be more towards DC coupling than the AC coupling systems.
Right. So if we have the battery storage integrate on the DC side, can I say that when we do the DC-AC ratio calculation, we really have to look at it from using the different methodology here, right?
So that is one way. One option is you develop a project. For example, you see this trend and you buy the inverters with the option for connecting the DC-DC converter, and you wait for the battery price to come down. Let's say 5-6 years later, and you add either PV or the batteries, PV and batteries to the existing systems. You can add the batteries easily, but you cannot increase the PV because you need more land areas required on the specific locations. So that is That is one scenario. Second scenario is if the business models are different. If you feed the daytime generations, if you feed the energy in the daytime, you get $1, for example. And if you feed at the evening time, like say 6 to 9, or morning 6 to 9, if you may get $2, for example, then you will stop feeding the generation in the daytime and store the energy and the batteries and you use it at the evening or morning time generations to get more revenue. But that will come possible only when the price of the batteries are getting reduced. Another scenario is a curtailment. For example, in Philippines, the grid capacity is very small. So another 5-6 years, there will be so much of renewable energy which grid operator wants to control it. So in case of curtailment, the DC coupling will come naturally into this and store the curtailment at the time of curtailment of 2 hours or 3 hours. The power will be pumped onto the batteries and that will be used at the later time for this.
Right. So so I hear that since we have more and more advanced solar inverters coming in, which will enable the DC coupling for the energy storage system, then this will change a lot of things, including the business model, including the levelized cost of the energies, and eventually will benefit the end users.
Yes. So new business models will evolve based on that once the battery price comes down.
Very interesting. So you mentioned about this curtailment. Yes, and in some countries, for example, in Vietnam, we've seen a lot of solar curtailment happening right now. So which create a lot of headaches for the project owners and also the investors. So so if as long as we have the new technology like for example the ESS DC couplings, this will definitely benefit.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think let me check on since we have almost 1 hour on the roundtable discussion here. Probably we should pause a little bit and see if we have any questions coming from the audience.
Yes, sir. So I will display the question. We have received one question. So let me just display it on the screen and any one of you can take it.
Yeah. In terms of zero export control when solar installation
Okay, so this is technically possible only when you have 1 meter. So let's say you have a big factory, you have 10 different buildings, and you have put 1 megawatt in each buildings, and then you want to have zero export for the 10 megawatt. It is possible only when you have 1 common meter for the 10 different projects, like a building meter, like where you feed the power to the grid. If you don't have 1 common meter, then zero export is not possible for the entire 10 megawatt. How much energy you feed in 1 meter, only for that much capacity, you can have zero export.
I can go next. We've technically done this in one of our projects. It's a 5.2 megawatt facility across 6 buildings with about 800 kilowatt to 1.2 megawatt on each building. So we have our own internally developed solution for this. Our company Sol Energy has our own R&D team that works closely with Fronius, the inverter that we carry, to develop a zero export curtailment system for multiple buildings. And yeah, we're happy to give a presentation on this to a potential client. But yeah, that's so it's 6 buildings, 800 to 1.2 megawatt systems, total of 5.2 megawatts. I think maybe I'll clarify a bit. each building has its own separate meter. They technically have their own industrial account with the utility. So they have their own service entrance. They're all connected eventually to a single distribution line that leads up to the utility substation. But it's in one compound, and it's owned by one conglomerate. So yeah, we can. It's technically possible, I would say.
Spencer, ma'am, you would like to add on something on this?
Yes, I think I also agree with Chris about this. It is completely possible, but we also need to pay attention to like the meters. So I think we need the meters to divide this large project to several sectors. So from GoodWe, we have a communication box called SEC 1000. So actually, this device can connect to multiple inverters to control the power output to the grid. So it can be able to realize the zero export power limit.
Great. So we have one more question. I'll display it on the screen.
Solar power project. Talking about the training and the development program.
So who would like to take up this question?
Yeah, actually from GoodWe, we have a team called GoodWe Solar Academy. So our team is actually sharing the solar technologies. So we have the website called Solar Community, and on our website we also hold many webinars to share the latest technologies. So from our website, I think he can get some of the trainings, but mainly from the like inverter side. And we also offers like a free PV system design platform called the Easy Designer. So it is totally free and open to everyone. So if he or she is very interested in this part, they can register account, so we can use our Easy Designer to try to make a small power plant design.
Okay, great.
So thank
Ajay
you.
sir, would you like to add on something on the same question?
Yes. So in general, there are two levels. One is learning an entire PV project design perspective. There are a lot of open courses offered by universities and other third-party organizations. So you can register for that training. Plus, additional to that, like inverter manufacturers perspective, we have Solar Academy, SMA Solar Academy, where we offer online sessions trainings from various countries. So for India, you can take it from Mumbai. So once lockdown restrictions are over, we have an office in Mumbai where we will conduct Solar Academy sessions, and at present we are doing all online sessions. So you can register for that and take in terms of design perspective from the inverter's view. But for the whole project design perspective or whole project management perspective, there are other open courses available.
Yeah, maybe I can also add into this topic on the training. So actually, UL has been providing all kinds of technical training for many years. It's actually one of our traditional service for UL. So in the solar territory, like for example, UL we've been providing the training for the EPC companies regarding the solar installation, site testing, commissioning training, following the IEC 63049. It's IEC 63049 training for the EPC companies. Yeah. So in fact, the Asian team has done these trainings in Taiwan, in Thailand, and in Vietnam. Thank you.
Great, sir. So, thank you so much, Danal sir. You did an excellent job, and again, I can't tell you how much you contributed to the success of the session and how much we appreciate your willingness to do it. So, thanks a lot to all our panelists. And now the floor is open for networking for an hour. Till then, bye from our end, and don't forget to join us tomorrow for more exciting and insightful panel discussions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
See you later.
Sure.
Yeah.